In 1998, a woman named Natasha vanished off the face of the earth. She was 22. She had a 6-year-old daughter at home. And the last thing she ever did was get on a bus. She thought she was going to Prague for a modeling job. She wasn't. And the man who arranged that bus, the man who arranged hundreds of buses just like it, is still alive today, still free. Living openly in Moscow in an apartment whose address the FBI knows and cannot touch. His name is Semion Mogilevich. And Natasha is just one name on a list that runs into the thousands. The FBI has been hunting this man for 30 years. 30 years of wiretaps, raids, indictments, diplomatic pressure. 30 years of the most sophisticated criminal investigation the Bureau has ever run. Nothing. He has never been convicted of a serious crime anywhere in the world. Not once. This is the story of how one man built an empire so untouchable that the FBI eventually stopped publicly admitting they were looking for him. How he moved weapons into war zones, laundered money through American stock markets, brokered nuclear materials, and walked away clean every single time. And how he's still doing it right now. First, you need to understand something about Semion Mogilevich. Because most people hear Russian mob boss and picture some guy in a tracksuit shooting people in a parking garage. That's not him. That's never been him. Mogilevich has never pulled a trigger in his life, never needed to. While other criminals were out there making noise, buying flashy cars, throwing money around, talking too much, Mogilevich was doing the opposite. He was invisible. He was the quiet man in the gray suit sitting in the corner of the room while everyone else got arrested. Here's what made him different. Every other criminal in his world thought about what they could take. Mogilevich thought about what they couldn't prove. Two completely different games. And his version of the game had a rule built into it from day one. Screw up and die, not because he'd kill you. Because the entire system he built was designed so that one visible mistake, one moment of ego, one person who talked too much, one car that was too expensive, collapsed everything. He didn't need to kill people who made mistakes. The mistakes killed them on their own. And he never made one, not in 50 years. Semion Mogilevich. Born June 30, 1946 in Kiev, Jewish family, working class. Nobody on the street looked at this kid and thought, there goes trouble. He was a student. Graduated with honors in economics from Lviv University. Economics, not street fighting, not weapons. Economics. And that's the thing that separated him from every other criminal in the Soviet Union. While the guys around him were thinking about how to steal things, Mogilevich was thinking about how money moves, where it disappears, where the gaps are between one legal system and the next. He found his first gap in 1979. The Soviet Union had started quietly letting Jewish families emigrate. Small numbers. Tightly controlled. They were leaving for Israel, for America, for anywhere else. And they had a problem. You could not take money out of the Soviet Union. Absolute rule. Zero exceptions, but you could take things. Jewelry, artwork, small valuables, the savings of a lifetime carried in a suitcase. Mogilevich walked up to these families with an offer. Hand over the valuables. He'd sell them in the West, send the money wherever they were going. A favor, a kindness between members of the same community. He looked them in the eye, he shook their hand. He was warm, he was reliable. He was exactly the kind of man you trusted. He took the valuables. He kept every single ruble. Not one family ever got paid. By the time they figured it out, they were in Tel Aviv or Brooklyn. No way back. No one to call. Nothing they could do. And Mogilevich was still in Kiev with a growing collection of other people's jewelry and zero legal exposure. He did this dozens of times, and every time he did it, he got better at it. This is the move he would run for the next 50 years. Different scale, different countries, different amounts, same principle. Find the gap between two legal systems, operate in that gap, make it impossible to prove. By the mid-1980s, Mogilevich had enough money to think bigger. He chose Budapest. Hungary was the first Eastern Bloc country to open up its economy, which meant Hungarian banks could talk to Western banks, and that was the interface Mogilevich had been looking for. A door between the dirty money he had and the legitimate financial world he needed to clean it through. He moved in 1990. He bought legitimate businesses, a nightclub, a currency exchange, a real estate company, all registered, all legal, all completely real on the surface, and underneath something else entirely. Because here's what was happening at the same time Mogilevich was setting up shop in Budapest. The Soviet military was falling apart. Officers who hadn't been paid in a year. Warehouses full of weapons with nobody guarding them. Rifles, rockets, artillery. 45 years of Cold War hardware sitting there, and the men responsible for it desperate enough to pick up a phone. Mogilevich answered. Yugoslavia was at war in 1991. The UN had an arms embargo in place. Didn't matter. Mogilevich had the shell companies, the paperwork, the routes, the contacts at the borders. The weapons moved. The money moved. Nobody could prove a thing. Vienna, 2:47 in the morning. A Hungarian border guard waves through a refrigerated truck. 14 crates, rifles, rocket launchers, bound for Yugoslavia. 6 months into the embargo, the border guard goes back to his coffee. Mogilevich goes back to his breakfast, one of hundreds of shipments that year alone. But moving weapons at that volume creates a new problem. Enormous amounts of it. Currencies that don't belong together. Amounts that trigger banking alerts. Money that could get you arrested just for having it. He needed somewhere to put it. Somewhere nobody would ever look. He found it on the Toronto Stock Exchange. YBM Magnex International, incorporated in Pennsylvania, listed in Toronto in 1995, manufacturer of industrial magnets, real offices, real board members, real audits, real financial statements. Stock launched at $2.40. By 1998, $20 a share. Pension funds bought it. Retirement accounts bought it. Normal people who did their homework bought it because it looked exactly like what it said it was. A boring, solid, growing industrial company. Here's what it actually was. The money from the weapons deals, the money from everything moving through Budapest, went in one end of YBM Magnex. Came out the other end as clean, documented, taxable investment returns. Untouchable, invisible, the perfect machine. April 28, 1998, FBI agents hit the Newtown, Pennsylvania offices. They found documents, financial records, connections back to Budapest. The stock collapsed in hours. $150 million gone in a single day. Gone from the investors, that is. Mogilevich had already been paid. He'd never been to Pennsylvania. His name appeared on none of the filings. Every layer of corporate structure between him and YBM Magnex had been built from day one specifically, so this moment couldn't touch him. The FBI charged several people connected to the scheme. They never charged Mogilevich, not once. And right when investigators thought they were close, right when they believed YBM was finally going to crack something open, Mogilevich made the whole question of arrest irrelevant. He moved to Moscow, not secretly, not under a fake name. He moved into a luxury apartment in an upscale neighborhood and just lived there, openly, no walls, no security detail, no concealment whatsoever, because he didn't need concealment. The FSB, Russia's successor to the KGB, knew exactly where he was. They had always known. And here's the thing Western intelligence agencies took too long to fully accept. They weren't trying to catch him. They were protecting him. Mogilevich had made himself useful to the Russian state. Financial infrastructure they couldn't officially touch. Money movement through structures completely untraceable to the Kremlin. Plausible deniability for operations that needed funding without fingerprints. In return, protection. Russian passports. The guarantee that no Western arrest warrant would ever be honored on Russian soil. By 2005, senior FBI officials were saying privately, never on the record, that Mogilevich wasn't a law enforcement problem anymore. He was a geopolitical problem. And those don't get solved in courtrooms. But even as he settled into Moscow, even as Washington slowly accepted they couldn't reach him, Mogilevich was quietly building something that made everything before it look small. Winter 2006, Bratislava, Slovakia. A woman named Marta pays her heating bill, -14 outside, 2 feet of snow. She doesn't think twice about it. The money goes to her utility provider. The utility provider pays a transit company. The transit company moves natural gas from Russian fields through Ukraine into Central Europe. The pipeline is operated by a company called Rose-Ucker Energo. Marta has never heard of it. She has no idea that Rose-Ucker Energo controls 25% of all natural gas flowing into Europe. She has no idea who owns the Ukrainian side of the company. She has no idea that the financial architecture of that ownership, the shell companies, the nominee directors, the jurisdictions matches. In precise, structural, documented detail every previous Mogilevich operation going back 20 years. She just wants her apartment warm. Ukrainian Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko figured it out. She publicly accused Rose-Ucker Energo of being connected to organized crime. She named Mogilevich associates as beneficial owners. She tried to cut the company out of the gas transit chain. She got removed from power. The government that replaced her gave Rose-Ucker Energo its contracts back. Tymoshenko got arrested. The European Court of Human Rights later ruled the arrest was politically motivated. Mogilevich was never named in any proceeding connected to any of it. 3 separate intelligence assessments, American and German, describe the ownership architecture of Rose-Ucker Energo as structurally identical to every previous Mogilevich operation. Not similar, identical. His name is nowhere in the documents. His fingerprints are all over them. Then came January 24, 2008. Russian police arrested Semion Mogilevich in Moscow. The FBI heard within hours. Senior officials briefed, and for about 48 hours, there was something inside the organized crime division that hadn't existed in 20 years. Then Russia announced the charges: tax evasion. Not arms trafficking, not the nuclear brokering, we're getting to that. Not Natasha, not the 340 deaths per week, Not $150 million in American pension losses. Tax evasion. Maximum penalty under Russian law, 4 years. For someone with his connections almost certainly suspended. 18 months later, July 24, 2009, the charges were dropped. Insufficient evidence. He walked out, went home, sat down at his kitchen table, probably had breakfast. The FBI put him on the 10 most wanted list the same month. Not because anyone thought it would lead to an arrest. As a statement, a public expression of 30 years of failure dressed up as pressure. One senior FBI official told a journalist off the record, a year later, "We know where he is, we know what he's done, we know what he's doing right now. And there is nothing inside the legal framework we operate in that we can do about it. Now." Before we get to where he is today and what he's still running inside the United States, we need to go back. Because there's a chapter in this story that doesn't get told enough. 1994 and 1995, Vladimir, former Soviet military technician, lost his job when the base closed. 14 months without pay, 3 kids, a mortgage the bank keeps calling about, and something in a storage unit outside Bratislava that his former employer has no idea he took. Enriched uranium, not enough for a weapon, enough for a dirty bomb, enough to contaminate a European city block for 10 years. In the right place at the right time, enough to cause a political crisis that could reshape the continent. He'd heard through people he knew that there were buyers. He made the call. According to a partially declassified CIA assessment from 1999, Mogilevich's network brokered at least 2 transactions involving radioactive materials in the mid-1990s, not transporting them, not handling them, sitting in the middle, taking a cut.